All right, everybody, how are you doing there this afternoon? I guess I should say now, this evening. 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins here on our Saturday evening. Let's talk Ian, of course. We've got a lot to go over for this evening. And it looks like we've seen some subtle changes today in the track. So that's actually been really good news, right? Yeah, it's not looking good at times today. There has been a little bit of a shift. Let's start with where we're at right now. The 8 p.m. update just came down. Winds are still at 45 miles per hour. All right. We do not get a track update, at least not this point in the game, at 8 o'clock. We will get our next track update at 11 p.m. this evening. Now, look what it's done today. It's having a hard time finding the center. I'm going to go ahead and stop this to where we're at now so you can see kind of went south. Now it's come back to the north. It looks like there could be a center down here as well, too, with the recon that's out there right now. They're actually trying to put one in here. So what we want from this is we want this to come further here before it turns, because then that will shift everything to the left when it gets in the Gulf of Mexico, and that would mean further away from us. But that's where it's at right now. This is a pretty good little stretch that we've had of it coming further out to the west. Now, there is some shear still on the system. Shear is not good for hurricanes, right? And you can see where it's all sitting back in here. The deal, though, is that that's where the shear is. There's no shear out here, and it's moving into that area. All right, well, there's a little bit, but there's not much at all. So we do expect this to strengthen up a little bit, and in fact, we do actually see some pretty good convection now on the right side. You see all this over here? That should end up wrapping around, and watch what's happening right here on the north side of it as well, too. So this thing is starting to try and organize and get a little bit better as we go through the next 24 hours. In fact, look at this. By Sunday night, tomorrow evening, we have 70-mile-per-hour winds, almost a hurricane. By Monday morning, it's a hurricane, and by Monday afternoon and evening, it's a Cat 2 with 110-mile-per-hour winds. Now, the latest, this was from 5 o'clock, they actually updated and increased the intensity to 130 miles per hour near the western tip of Cuba by Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday, Cat 4 west of Marco coming up. Let me zoom in a little bit here for you. This is the change. There's the center now, right? It was here, and then it was here earlier. So really what they've done, instead of going in towards Hernando County, they're now going in up here. So they've shifted to the left a little bit. That is great news. That's what we want to see, at least for us here in the Tampa area in west central Florida. I'm going to go over the models here in just a little bit, but there's some idea that it could go even further to the west, but not all. I mean, look, the European is still over here. We are still in this cone. We are, let me put it to you this way. We are in an evacuation zone, level A here at the station. And so we're making plans, right? And we're kind of watching each model update. We're watching each Hurricane Center update. And I'm still advising our station that we need to evacuate. This looks better. The highest winds would stay offshore if that was the case. But this is still going to blow. I mean, just think about this. This is moving like this, right? So this is going to blow a lot of water up towards the coast. So we're still going to have some storm surge, even if it took this strength, this track. But keep in mind, the center can go anywhere in here. It can still do that, okay? So I do feel a little bit better about this track shifting a little bit further to the west, but by no means are we out of the woods with this yet. All right, let's talk tropical storm wind probability. So this is where the best chances from the Hurricane Center to see tropical storm force winds, right? Now, they also give us some probability in here, 46% in Tampa. You see a lot of it shifting offshore. But this also gives us some timing, and I love this because tropical storm force winds would start down towards Key West around 8 p.m. Tuesday. The Tampa area would be after sunrise on Wednesday. This is the 8 a.m. line, and this is going to change, right? But basically, you want all your preps done by sunset on Tuesday if you're doing something, okay? And then it looks like, oh, Tuesday night won't be terrible, but the weather certainly will be going downhill late Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, according to the timing now. This has changed. This is about 12 hours slower. So we were thinking Tuesday afternoon, weather would go downhill. Now it's Wednesday morning, okay? And that'll update, and of course we'll give you the updates on that. Now look, this is a good trend that we want to see. The models are shifting back to the west. Now, this is the UK Met. We'll get some new runs of this coming in, and we'll see what that wants to do. The European, guys, I hate to say it, it's over here as well, too. Now, the issue with this is right here. So, Recon's out there now, and they think they see a center maybe a little to the north and the west. If that's the thing, then that data goes into the models. That shifts the beginning of the model run to the north and the west, and that'll shift everything potentially to the north and the west. So I got a feeling we're still going to be going back and forth with these models through the day tomorrow as well. In fact, there's always going to be some change, but we still have to make this turn. Now, let's start talking about the ensembles. This is the GFS ensembles, which means the GFS is run 21 different times. Here's all the lines. Each line you see there is a different run of the GFS model. And I mean, this is great. Look at all of this that's out here. Now, there's still a couple that are over here. But as far as the GFS is concerned, we're on the very far right of that guidance. Now let's look at the European forecast model. And this seems to be actually, in fact, coming back more towards Florida as we get recent data in. There's still some over here, but as you can tell, GFS is right over us. The European's right over us. The GFS is back out, taken up towards the Western Panhandle. So that's why the spread. And even the Hurricane Center is looking at this saying, look, this forecast accuracy, days 4 and 5, which is what we're concerned about at this point, is very, very low at this point. Our confidence in that forecast is low. Here's the difference between the two models. Oh, don't tell me it did that. Oh, I'm going to lose the data. All right. But bottom line is, let me see if I can just do this. I'm going to have to edit this. I hate to do this, guys, but everybody be safe from the Rhode Island family. That's nice of you guys. Appreciate that. Let's go 18Z data. I'm going to do the same thing here. See if the 18Z is in. Probably not going to have as much from that. All right, we're not going to be able to show you that one. That's okay. A little bit of data issue there. Watches and warnings, as far as that goes. Right now, they have a hurricane warning for parts of Grand Cayman, obviously. You can see that right there. And then a tropical storm watch to the east of that. All right, now let's talk winds. So the Hurricane Center issues this forecast for the storm winds, and you'll see that color there. Now, it's only going to go out so far. In fact, it's going to stop when it gets towards Cuba. And that's as far out as it goes in time. So this is Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. But you can see it strengthening right in here. I think this red will stay there. This is something that it just tends to do. But you can see it's a relatively small storm, although it will get bigger. But you can see tropical storm force winds in the yellow, winds of 60 miles per hour, which is still tropical storm force. But they're going to stay on the western tip of Cuba. I can't show you this all the way up towards Florida at this point. They don't issue that, and for good reason. We don't know. I mean, that's too far out in time as far as that goes. I can show you this version of the European, and you see it here. It is coming right over top of Tampa. Now, it does appear to be a weaker storm if it does that. All right, but certainly we would deal in with potential for hurricane force winds here. Okay, now let's take a look at the GFS version of that. And you can see it's further west down here in the Yucatan Channel. And then look at that. It goes right up into the Panhandle. Okay, you see that there? So that's the big difference in the models there. Even if it does this, which would be best for us, we still think counterclockwise flow. We still have a lot of wind blowing water towards us. So we're going to end up with some surge right there. So let me leave it on this graphic right here. I want to answer some of your questions if I can. This one I love just because it has the timing, and it kind of gives you a better idea of when you can get prepared. There's a lot of uncertainty in this forecast track for days 4 and 5. This is going to go back and forth a little bit here, especially with recon in there now, finding a couple little centers, right? Because that has to go into the computer models, and then that's going to spit out some new resolutions. But timing-wise, this shouldn't change too much. We're definitely thinking Wednesday, Thursday is the time that we'll deal with most of this. All right, let's see what we got for questions here. We have to share hurricanes in Rhode Island, absolutely. I've only experienced one bad one, Irma. Yeah, I names. Lisa, we were talking about that. The I names are just... and Hermine formed off the coast of Africa a couple days ago. There was a race to see who was going to get Hermine and who was going to get Ian, and of course we ended up with Ian. it's weird it's staying at 45 miles per hour and then it skips Cat 1 and goes directly to Cat 2. Yeah, well, what that's doing, Robin, is the Hurricane Center saying that forecast includes potentially some rapid intensification. And rapid intensification is when the winds climb 30 knots within a 24-hour period. And that's what they're saying Sunday night into Monday afternoon, it's going to do that. And in fact, I can show you, there's just another line that I don't have on here because we're trying to save up space so it doesn't look too crowded for you. But I can go ahead and add that for you right there. So the interval will show you, it's a 60 hour, I think. Yep, I'll turn the 60 hour on. Kind of crowds things up there, you see that? Gotta turn this back here. So now you can see the difference, or can you? Let me reload this for you. Just kind of added that in there. Now you can see the difference between the two, right? So Monday afternoon 110, Monday night into Tuesday morning 125, and then 130 by Tuesday afternoon. So that's the skip that you're seeing there. Patty says, only time will tell how bad it's going to be. You're absolutely right. And that's why we have to get prepared. Donna said there's no bottled water in Winter Haven. Lowe's broke apart cases and we're only selling 2 bottles to each customer. That's good that he did that. Donna, you know, there's been some issues with water on the shelves before all of this. I went the beginning of this past week on Monday. I was kind of, wanting to refresh my hurricane kit, looking at all this stuff in the long range models. And the water aisle at the local Publix here was pretty bare. It wasn't completely bare, but it was pretty bare. So there's been some issues with water on the shelves for a couple weeks, I think, at least. I'm not too sure about all that. Temple Terrace, Beverly, how are you doing? Good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. If it does take a turn to the east and hits us, is it still likely to be a Cat 4? Jennifer, great question. Tough to tell. That's just really tough to tell. It does certainly have the potential to do so. There will be some southwesterly shear. That means winds coming across the Gulf of Mexico to the northeast. And that is not going to be too good for the storm when that does start to get in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So that could bring down intensity a little bit, but it's just way too far out in time to say that. We're just kind of looking at what's happening down here in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, because there's a low wind shear environment. There's a lot of warm water, and that warm water is deep too. Like the depth of the warm water is deep there as well too. So even when the winds blow away that top water, the water, it's called upwelling, the water that comes up from underneath the surface to fill that's warm water too. Warm water is gasoline for the fire to make a hurricane. And so usually if you blow away that top water, you get some cooler water to come up and the hurricane isn't as strong. But in that area, that water underneath the surface is warm too. And so that's why you can make those storms pretty strong. How's Callahan looking? Because the projected path doesn't look promising for my area. Yeah, in Cedar Key, Deborah, Cedar Key. I mean, because obviously Cedar Key is one of the bigger storm surge issues that we have. And this particular track would not be good at all for Cedar Key. That would be a large storm surge. Too soon to tell, to throw out numbers, anything like that. But especially you get up towards the Callahan area as well too, you're kind of getting closer to this thing. Yeah, everybody should prepare for it. Michelle says you got time to do it. Yeah, and it's what we're doing here at the station, because we have to prepare. If we pull back on those preps and we don't evacuate to our backup facility, that's just fine. But we can't act like we're not going to do it and then Monday go, oh man, we got to evacuate, right? So we've got all those plans in place. All the motion's been on lots of conference calls, as you can imagine. A lot of people working behind the scenes to make sure everybody working here is safe and that we can continue to inform you guys and get you prepared and connected with all the weather information that you need. And part of that problem for us is getting on TV, which we do from our station here, but this is right by the water. So we move inland, and we've got a whole nother studio set up over there with everything that we need there. Donna's a newbie here to Florida. Well, Donna, look, here's the deal. There's the wind threat, knocks down trees, knocks out power, break things. There's the flooding threat from rain, which just about everybody can see. I mean, if you live in a flood-prone area, obviously you're more likely than that. But we're all going to get a bunch of rainfall if it comes up the coast like this. And then there's the storm surge flooding, and that's literally the wind of the hurricane blowing the Gulf of Mexico and Tampa Bay up on land. And that can go 2, 4, 6, 8 feet. And that is what's more devastating than anything else. And this is a surge issue for us now. We just don't know how much because we don't know exactly where it's going to go. But that will lead to evacuations. That's what we get evacuations for. It's for the water. Look, this thing could be 200 miles wide. It's going to be wider than the state. You know, at least the west coast of the state's going to get some wind. But not everybody's going to get water running into their houses, right? But the folks that live along the immediate beach, the coast, they are. And if it comes close enough, and so then they were the ones that would have to get evacuated. So that's kind of how it works here with that. What about Gainesville, Florida? Gainesville, kind of same thing. I mean, you don't obviously have the storm surge threat. You have a rainfall threat. You get flooding from that, and certainly some high winds. Again, too early to say how much it is, but you're just lucky you don't have that storm surge threat. Good tip today is fill empty water bottles from your tap, filter water, or store them, and freeze them for ice. Yeah, so people go and they buy all this water off the shelves. Well, look, your tap is fine right now. There's no issues, right? So if the issue is you may not have containers to put it in, but certainly fill it up if you've got containers. Freeze them. Don't fill them all the way up so the water can expand a little bit, but freeze them. Then you put them in the cooler. Now you've got ice to keep things cool. Plus, when it thaws a little bit, you can drink the water as well. Putting water in the bathtub, right? Oh, we say, hey, put water in the bathtub. Well, obviously, that's not water to drink. That's in case for some reason the water service to your house goes out and you need to use the toilets. You pour that water into the toilet, then you can flush the toilet with that bath water. Okay. Now, be careful especially if you got little kids, because a bathtub full of water, they come over and trip over and head first into that thing. That could end tragically. So I always tell people, if you do that and you have little kids around the house, close that bathroom door and keep it closed so that they can't get in there. We don't want anything like that happen. Will it be anything like Irma, Lisa? It's just too early to say. Now, Irma went up the spine of the state and it blew water out of here. We did not have a storm surge. This looks like it will be a storm surge either way. It'll be a big one or it'll be a small one, right? And we're going to be on what's called the dirty side, so we're going to have the chance for tornadoes as this thing comes up, all the way up the state. All right, just because if it goes to the west of us, we're on the right side, that's that northeast quadrant, the one that gives us the best chance for tornadoes. So I got a hotel from Monday to Thursday. Now it's hitting Thursday. It's pushed back 12 hours at least. But Wednesday, Thursday, by sunrise Wednesday morning, we could be looking at tropical storm force winds moving into the area. So Wednesday and Thursday are the 2 days of concern at this particular point. Put water in Ziploc baggies. Great idea. Put them in the freezer. Yep. Citrus County. Oh, from Ohio, I never experienced anything like this. All right, Janet in Citrus County. The deal there, and depends on where you are, is very low-lying area along the coast. So that US 19 corridor will flood quickly and easily. The rivers everywhere across Florida that you're going to get a lot of rainfall. Those rivers flood after the event. They'll flood 2 days later, 3 days later, and then that flooding will last for days, depending on how much water we get. So, first of all, this system, the way it's coming up now, if it hugs the coast, it's a wind problem, it's a water problem from rainfall, and it's a surge problem. It's all three. Now, if you're not along the immediate coast, it's not a surge problem for you, but this could be a wind and rain problem for just about everybody. So what happens is usually this comes up, power goes out, you could be 4, 5, 6, 7 days without power, just depends on where you live. That's really the worst of it, and hopefully you don't have too much damage to your house at that particular point. How far do the strong winds carry outside of the eye? The northeast side is notoriously bad, which looks like it will affect most of the Gulf Coast. Yeah. So Rosie, we don't know at this particular point. I mean, we know I think it's 45 miles. Tropical storm force winds are out from the center right now. We don't know what that will look like. If I showed you a GFS model of the wind, it would show you most of the high winds just offshore, but that model's well to the west. The European's right over top of us almost, but that has lower winds, I think like 50s and 60s sustained with gusts higher than that. But that's going to change, and it's just too soon to tell. This 130 that you see here is going to be right there in that northeast eye wall, eastern eye wall, and that's going to be the worst wind. If that stays offshore of Tampa, then you're not going to get 130 mile per hour winds, right? But you're going to get, the further away it is, the less wind you're going to get. And that's all something that we won't really know until, well, let's look at it this way. Right now, the forecast from the Hurricane Center has about 100, 105 mile per hour winds somewhere around the Big Bend. And wherever that eye wall goes, and this may be about 10 miles wide, right? That right side of that is where we're going to have those highest winds. Outside of that 10-mile area, 5-mile area, the winds won't be quite that high, but they'll definitely be enough to make damage if this forecast holds. And that's the problem. We know this forecast is going to change a little bit. So we just keep updating you guys as we go, as we get more information. That's why Recon's in there right now. We've got Recon flying down around the storm, but they're also doing dropsondes and things out in front of it and out over the Gulf of Mexico, and using weather balloons from Florida to kind of really look at the atmosphere that's here now, sample that atmosphere, and throw it in the models as well. Let me get down here. Lots of questions coming in. Free Ziploc bag, make big blocks of ice, so I did, and that did wonders. Yeah, absolutely, Irene. One cool thing to do is if you do evacuate, and you want to do this in the next couple days or so, if you're going to leave and you don't know if the power went out, say the power went out and everything in your refrigerator and freezer thawed and got bad, and then the power comes back on, and by the time you get back on, everything's frozen again, right? You don't know if everything thawed out, went bad, and then froze again. What I suggest you do is you take like a coffee mug or even just a cup, it doesn't matter, a plastic cup, fill it up with water, stick it in the freezer and let it freeze. Do that tonight. Tomorrow morning, put a quarter on top of that. Take it out, put a quarter on top of that frozen ice in that cup and stick it back in there in the corner somewhere. When you evacuate, if you come back and that quarter's frozen down at the bottom of that cup, that means obviously it thawed, the quarter dropped to the bottom, then the power came back on, and the water froze back up again. It's a really good way to let you know if that food in the freezer went bad or not. Could there be shelter in place for the Tampa Bay area? Garcia, yeah, it certainly could be, but usually, what happens is we get evacuations, level A, which is like the lowest, and then level B. And at that point, we've got a lot of people on the roads trying to get out. We don't want a lot of people on the roads that don't have to evacuate. And then those people that are potentially going to have to evacuate, for your hurricane plan, you should know where you would go, right? And we want you to go just tens of miles. We don't want you to go hundreds of miles. Just get away from the water, right? Just go inland. I mean, if you live on Clearwater Beach, you're going into central Pinellas somewhere, or maybe, northern Hillsborough or something. You're not going to Orlando. I mean, you can, and that the East Coast would have less effects from this storm, so that would probably be the best thing if you were planning on going somewhere. But overall, you just want to make it easier on yourself. Just get out of the threat of the water, the storm surge, not the rain. I mean, obviously, don't go to an area that floods a lot from rainfall, but we're trying to get people out of that storm surge. That is the most deadly aspect of these hurricanes. Philip says your dishwasher is a good place to put your stuff. No, Philip, we used to say that. I used to hear that a lot, at least. It's not really. The dishwasher does keep water out, but if you get a good surge in there, it can dislodge the dishwasher and then turn it around and fall over and all kinds of different things. And then it just gets pulled out. It's not good. Your important papers and things like that, that's what you want to take with you. You want your insurance papers, right? You want your Social Security cards, your birth certificates, things like that. They should be in a go case, usually like a fireproof case, right? A metal box. They should always be there anyways, not just for hurricanes, but just anyways. And then if you have them all in one place, your passports, things like that, if you do have to evacuate, that's one thing you grab, you put it right in the car, and everything's in there, it's all taken care of. Say you had a fire at your house just any time of the year, that could potentially help save those as well too. So it's kind of a good idea to have those organized anyways, but certainly you want to take that stuff with you. Any idea of expected surge in Citrus County? No. Sorry, Melanie. I know. I wish I could tell you that. I mean, I could say if that right there happened, 105 mile per hour winds, that exact track, Citrus County would probably get 6 to 8, 8 to 10 foot of storm surge. It all depends. It really depends. It's too early to do that, but that's a big storm, or a lot of wind. And storm surge is about a couple different things. It's about how fast the wind's blowing, right? Obviously, it's blowing the water. How long is that wind blowing on the water? Because the longer, the more water it pushes. What does the coastline look? So if you've got a coastline like this and you're blowing it kind of like, Citrus County up through the Big Bend, there's nowhere else to go. It's like a catcher's mitt. So it literally catches more water, and water can get higher, right, into it. So that's the shape of the coastline. And then you look at the bottom of the coastline. And this is the problem with the Tampa area, in fact, most of West Florida, is that if you go offshore 30 miles, it's only 55, 65 feet deep, right? You go off the East Coast 5 miles, and it's 60-some feet deep, and it drops off real quick. So the West Coast is like this, and the wind can easily push the water up that slope. The East Coast is like this. So when the wind blows, it's harder to get it up that hill and cause storm surge. It can certainly do it, and it does. But the west coast of Florida is very shallow, and it's just really easy to blow water up there. And so, in fact, the National Hurricane Center uses Tampa as a case study. They'll say, okay, let's practice and let's drill. All right, we've got a Cat 3 moving northeast at 15 miles per hour with landfall at Tarpon Springs. What are you going to do? Well, what are we expecting? And that's pretty much worst case scenario for the Tampa area, because then that not only blows water up against the coast, but that blows water up into the bay. And people think of Clearwater Beach having storm surge. How about Davis Island's completely underwater, right? All of that area, Apollo Beach, all that area on the east side of the bay is a level A evacuation zone as well too. So it's not just the actual beaches. Tampa Road, south of Lineball up into Oldsmar area, level A. If you got a lot of wind, and that water level will rise in this case. We just don't know how much in this particular case. But a southeast wind way offshore out here, okay, a southeast wind, let's get here a little bit more, is blowing right in there, right? And I'll blow it right in the mouth of the bay. And it's going to be blowing this way, and then this way, and then that way. So that's amount of time too. So we do expect some surge. Again, the key, the most surge is going to be right in here, wherever that particular part of the storm meets land, and that would be right there in this case. And this, again, this track's going to change, I'm sure. How far inland should you go if you don't need to evacuate, but just far from the ocean? Nowhere. If you do not need to evacuate, do not leave your house, right? Unless you live in a mobile home, then you need to get into a more sturdy structure. But we don't, as I said, we don't want you on the roads, because we got people that do have to evacuate. And the traffic's going to get bad, and tempers are going to get short, and it's not going to be fun. If you were trying to get gas today or went to the grocery store, I'm sure that wasn't the most pleasant thing. We live in a trailer, but mother-in-law lives farther from ocean than us, so we usually go there. But how about this one? She lives Sarasota. So yeah, Kim, you've got to get out. If you're in a trailer, you don't want to be there. Okay, so you do have to go, and that should be part of your hurricane plan, right? And going to Sarasota for your mom's is great, as long as she's not in an evacuation zone, right? Because then she's got to leave too. So just know your zone. That's really key, to know what zone you're in. All right, what do we got here? Can it shift back south, Garcia? Yes, it can. Again, look, the European is somewhere over here, right? The GFS is actually way over here. Okay, so, and that's why the cone is here. The cone is actually has not much to do with the models as much as they think that this one point is where the center of the storm will be, and they're not very confident about that, by the way. And then what they do is they have a concentric circle, right? And this distance is the average, it's actually from here to here, is the average error that they've had in that day 5 forecast over the last 5 years. And so they just say, all right, the point's going to be right here, so then they put the circle around it. Day 4 is going to be right here, so they put a slightly smaller circle around it. Day 3 is going to be here, slightly smaller circle, and then you connect these lines, and this is exactly what you have here, right? You've got one circle here. You've got a circle here, smaller. You've got a circle here, and you've got another one here. That's all that is. And that has nothing to do with the weather associated with the hurricane. This cone, it doesn't mean that like if you're here, you're not going to get any weather from the storm. This just means that the center of the storm can go anywhere from here to here, knowing how their forecast averages have been over the last 5 years. So 150 to 200 miles wide is the average error at day 5. So this spot right here could be 150 to 200 miles off. That's a long, this is about 120 miles wide. All right, so it could definitely make a big difference. What are the chances of it hitting Tampa Bay direct? Well, Garcia, they're looking a little bit better, but earlier in the, like I said, the European's still doing it. The GFS is not. There's still that option. There is still a chance that we get hit, and that's why we're planning on potentially evacuating here too. Do I think it's going to hit Tampa Bay? It's trending. Let me take you here. It's trending a little bit. The models are actually looking a little bit better, but you see that they're still starting to come back in here. So there's still a lot to it. I mean, look at the GFS. I'll show you these. This is the GFS, a bunch of different versions of it. And we're getting some new ones in, and there's still a bunch that are here. All right, and I think there's a few more here than just in the last couple of hours when the runs are coming. Still a bunch out here. You can see the average is this white line sitting right in here, but way close to us. And then, of course, the European is pretty much all in. You can see, yes, there is a bunch out here, but the majority are sitting right in this area, right over top of Tampa. All right, so that's where we're at with that one. Flood zones. A lot of times you can find them on your power bill or your water bill, because your water bill is usually from the county. If you live in Pinellas or Hillsborough County, just go on the internet and search evacuation zone Pinellas County, evacuation zone Hillsborough, and there'll be county websites that you can put your address in usually and find that. So Central Florida, Indiana wants to know, well, we don't really know. So like, look, I know everybody wants to know what's it going to be like, what are we going to get? Well, we just don't know. I mean, as I mentioned, the highest winds will be right around the center, wherever that center goes in. And right now, the Hurricane Center thinks that those winds will be anywhere from about 100 to 105 miles per hour. And those highest winds will be right here. And then you're saying, I want to know what it's going to be like over here. Well, obviously not 105, right? But I could say from their forecast, this would probably have tropical, 30s and 40s. Then you've got 50s, 60s, 70s here, and then higher offshore. But telling you that now doesn't really do too much, because this is likely to change. If this does come further like this, then you're sitting in Lakeland, Central Florida, you're going to get higher winds than that previous forecast. Tropical storm force winds. At this point, I would say most of our area, Polk included, would have tropical storm warnings, especially along the immediate coast. Looks like Cape FM. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Angie. Cape FM. I feel like I should know what that is, but I don't. Cape FM is out of danger. Just moved to Apollo Beach. What is the risk flood? So Sandy, you have a storm surge risk. You are in level A. You would have to evacuate if they think that level A is going to get flooded. So let me just draw this out here for you, okay? Level A is, and this is, it's something like this. No, that's not that far inland, but down here like this. Okay, Apollo Beach is right in here. All right, you're level A. And people don't think about storm surge over here because they think about the beaches, right? These are the beaches. There's Clearwater, and down Madeira Beach, Indian Rocks. You get down here to Fort DeSoto. And clearly, right, you've got wind blowing onshore here. It's going to blow in water. But that wind's also blowing the water right up into here. And right up into here. And so there's this, and look, there's nowhere for it to go. It just stops, right? So this fills up quickly. And that causes this flooding that's all the way over in here. I mean, Davis Islands, for instance, is, all level A. So, we may potentially be looking at some evacuations. We don't have that at this point. But really, I mean, you can look at what's down there now, but what they're really looking at is, hey, look, what's this forecast? Where do we think it's going to be? How much surge do we think we're going to get? And when? Because they need to start that evacuation process. If it's a level A and B, that means there's a lot of people that have to be evacuated, and that means that they're going to have to get that process started quicker. So if we were to do some evacuations along the immediate coast here in the Tampa Bay area, and we're expecting the weather to really go downhill Wednesday, I would say Monday, perhaps tomorrow night they would start with that in Pinellas. Otherwise, it would be Monday. When Irma came, they went 72 hours in advance. If that were the case, if we went 72 hours in advance with this, back up from Wednesday morning, Tuesday morning, Monday morning, Sunday morning, they could, in reality, start it tomorrow. Have not heard of anything like that yet, though, so that's the good news. I do know that you're going to start to see sandbags and places like that tomorrow morning. Okay, guys, getting ready to do some TV here in just a little bit, so I'm going to let you go. But don't forget, on my Facebook page, Bobby Deskins Weather, also my YouTube is Bobby Deskins Weather. I put lots of updates on there, so go ahead and subscribe and like those. Tyler's here with me now. We've got Grant and Rich in the morning. We've got Natalie coming in tomorrow afternoon. I'll be in tomorrow afternoon, not going to the Bucks game. I'm going to watch it from in here in the studio and watch this hurricane here, tropical storm, and see what happens. Don't get too upset about this one right now, right? You can't. I got kind of happy today that this was moving to the west. It might go further west. We're going to get another track at 11, but it might just kind of hang in there because the models look like they're trying to come back towards the coast. So as it stands right now, we're going to get a good storm here. All right, Wednesday, Thursday. So get prepared for that. The more prep you do now, the less stressful it will be when this comes by us. Okay? That's it, guys. Stay tuned right here. Don't forget, all of our platforms will be keeping you updated with these live talks all the time, and get to ask your questions as well, too. All right? So thanks, guys. It was good to talk to you tonight. Laura, no problem. I hope you have a great and safe time out there, you guys.